Welcome to the Projects Distilled YouTube channel where we talk about all things project management. I am so glad that you're here. In this video, we are going to talk about what happens when you have to change project managers mid-flight. So when a project is already underway and you have to switch out project managers. Now that can happen for a lot of reasons. It could be that a manager just needs a project manager to work on something else and so you're slotted in. It could be that you have to be pulled off a project because you're needed somewhere else. It can be because somebody leaves the organization. It can be because somebody's not doing well on a project. It can be because a customer is asking for a change. There can be a lot of reasons, some of them fine and neutral, some of them negative. We're going to look at what to do if you are the project manager who is leaving, as well as what to do if you are the project manager who's taking on the new project. Let's dive in. If you're the project manager leaving the project, you should leave it in as best shape as possible. You should always be graceful in your exit. Be grateful for it, help the other project manager take it on and bring it to conclusion. That said, there are some concrete things that you should do. Number one, make sure that all of your documentation is up to date. There's nothing worse than getting a new project and not being able to rely on the information that's in there. Yeah, updating documentation is a bummer, but you should be doing it as a regular part of your project hygiene. Make sure it's updated. Two, communicate gracefully to your stakeholders and to the team members. You may want to call the team together. Whatever it is, make sure that you're setting up that other project manager for success. Number three, conduct and plan actual knowledge transfer, KT, for the new project manager. This is so critical. Set up dedicated time every day during the transition period so that you can transfer knowledge about the project, the inner workings, the team members, the stakeholders, all of the dynamics that go into a project. Also, once you have handed off that project, be available to that project manager for additional questions, if at all possible, if you're still with that organization. So what does a good knowledge management transfer plan look like for a project manager? I call it the 2-2-2 plan because for most of the projects I've worked on, it makes sense to have 2 weeks where the original project manager is handing off knowledge and the new project manager is shadowing. Then 2 weeks where the new project manager is starting to take over and they're both kind of co-leading. And then 2 weeks where the new project manager is running it and the old project manager is sitting in the shadows helping out where they can. It's a 6-week total transfer period. Can't always do that, so there are some variations. You can make it 1 week, 1 week, 1 week. Or you can just do a 2-2 plan where it's 2 weeks of the new project manager shadowing, 2 weeks where the old project manager is shadowing. That cuts it down by a third. Unfortunately, sometimes there's a 0 handoff period. That's the worst. So now we're going to talk about what you need to do to take on a project if you've just been handed a project mid-flight. So the number one best thing you can do is set up that knowledge transfer plan if you can. Sometimes those knowledge transfer plans are a luxury and you don't get it, but if you can, set that up first thing, start to do that knowledge transfer with the former project manager. Next, and this is controversial, but every time you change a project manager in flight, you are adding risk to a project. So I advise my project managers to shift the project from green to yellow, and sometimes from green to red. It just depends on the circumstance. Why would you do that? For 2 reasons. Number one, it signals to everyone involved in the project that there is a significant risk that could hit, and that is that there could be a stumble during the transfer of the project managers. This lets stakeholders and everyone know that you're on top of the risk, you're managing the risk, but the risk is there. It also, number two, gives you leeway to then change some things if you need to. You can say at the end of the transfer period, hey, this is how it was run. I think we need to do this to be successful. And you have the stakeholders on alert already that there could be some risk and there could be some change coming. So that sets the stage for it. So if you walk into a project and it's a disaster, you may want to flip it all the way down to red. Do that sparingly because what you're telling stakeholders is that the former project manager drove the project into the ground. You want to be cautious in the kind of messaging and the tone that you deliver. Number three, conduct what I call a project inventory. Do a gap analysis of where the project is and where it should be. What are those gaps? Maybe everything's fine, then you can message that. Also do a gap on what the stakeholders are expecting and have been told versus what the reality is. Sometimes when project managers get changed out, it's because they're not communicating everything effectively and there could be some hidden messaging that hasn't gone out or hasn't been heard. You need to get that out there. If you've been handed a project and after your project inventory, you determine that it should be red and that there are some real problems, you may want to consider something called the big bath. Now, the big bath is a term that is used often with companies that are reporting their financial statements. If you take bad news and you dribble it out slowly over time, then you're setting up a pattern of bad news and people are going to start to think of the project in negative terms. If you communicate one time bad news, But a lot of it, that's better than dribbling it out over time. That's the big bath. That's get everything out so that the next time you communicate out to the stakeholders, it's positive news. You're doing better against all of that bad news that came out in the big bath. You're going to want to establish communication with the team members and the stakeholders. Team members, sit down and spend time with each team member individually, at least the key ones, so that you can get their take on where the project is. They're going to be your best eyes and ears, best source for information about how well the project is really going. Do the same thing with key stakeholders and the project sponsors so that you can get their take on how the project is going, and you can make any kinds of pivots that you may need to get everything back on track. While you're establishing those relationships, and it takes a while as a new project manager to really get fully in the saddle of the project, be extra vigilant, over communicate, trust but verify, do everything you can to make sure that the project is going to succeed. And as always, be careful of the tone. You don't want to throw the previous project manager under the bus unless there's been some dire negligence on their part. I've created this document, which I've made available to you along with the other slides on the video description. This is a way to judge how much trouble the project's in, from a lot of trouble, red on the one side, all the way to green on the other side, and some of the actions that you should consider taking along that spectrum. And if you're all the way on the red, you're going to have to think about the big bath. You're going to think about communicating, shifting everything to red. If the project manager is there and everything is going okay and you're doing knowledge transfer, then it may be all the way on the green side, and you may want to shift it to yellow just as a precaution, but you may just keep it green if everything is really genuinely going fine. And then there's everything in between. This guide is here to help you to know what to do if you're in that place. Changes in project management, never easy, but it happens. And you may have a project taken from you. You may have a project given to you. You need to be ready. I hope this video was helpful. If it was, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for your time.